Welcome back to Psychedelic Therapy Frontiers, the podcast devoted to exploring the frontiers of psychedelic medicine and what it takes to cultivate a healthy mind, body, and spirit. I'm Dr. Steve Thayer, and today my co-host, Dr. Reid Robison, and I discuss masculine and feminine polarities. We talk about the way these energetic types manifest within each of us, also in relationship dynamics, and in therapy. We even play a clip from the late, great Macho-man Randy Savage, so stay tuned for that. For those of you who are interested in Numinus's psychedelic education and training programs, we're offering a course called Embodied Inquiry, a new methodology for psychedelic-assisted therapy. This course offers practitioners a roadmap for navigating the complexity, intensity, and vulnerability that arises in psychedelic therapy work. It's a 3-day experiential workshop that introduces participants to the practice of embodied inquiry and its application through preparation, medicine sessions, and integration sessions. You can click the link in the show notes, or you can go directly to numinus.com/hour-training-selection and use the code PTF10 for 10% off. If you haven't signed up for the MAPS Psychedelic Science Conference in June in Colorado yet, it's not too late. Numinus is offering an exclusive 20% discount code to our PTF podcast listeners. Again, click the link in our show notes and use the code NWI20 at checkout for that discount. If you'd like to support the show, you can do so by leaving us a rating or review in places like Apple Podcasts or Spotify. You can always support us by sharing the episode with somebody, subscribing to the show on whatever platform you listen on, leaving us a review, and sending us an email or comments on the show and on topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes. Please enjoy today's episode on polarity. And we're back. Another episode of the Psychedelic Therapy Frontiers Podcast. How you doing, Reid?
Pretty good. How are you, Steve?
I'm good. I will say that my wife said our last episode was good, but hard to follow.
Oh, burn. No, thank you, Amy.
Yes, it was good feedback. But I thought it was a fun episode on attachment. We did have one comment that they wanted more information about how to actually heal attachment wounds with psychedelics. We skipped over that at the end, and we talked about it a little bit.
I agree. Yeah.
Maybe we'll do a round 2 in the future.
Hard to cover it all in an hour or less.
Yeah. So we will similarly not cover it all for today. Our topic today, we thought we might talk about polarity, this concept of polarity. So you'll hear it a lot, especially in terms of, or with reference to masculine and feminine energies. Or masculine and feminine traits, both within a person and also between people. And perhaps we should say at the outset that when we're talking about masculinity and femininity, we're not necessarily talking about gender or gender identity. We'll talk about men and women, but we want to be sensitive to the truth that gender identity can be fluid, that it's not necessarily a binary, although in talking about masculine and feminine energies, there is a harmony between, as the term polarity implies, two basically binary energy types. I don't know, do you want to offer any clarity on that point?
Yeah. So one kind of foundational comment is what makes a relationship work easily, peacefully, are things in common. What makes a relationship passionate are things that are different. Like the arc of polarity is that arc of kind of electromagnetic attraction between two individuals. And it goes with that saying, opposites attract. And I really like the disclaimer that gender doesn't matter here. Although if you're looking at, I don't have a reference for this, but it's from one of the kind of original and most widely read authors on polarity of the modern day, David Data, who says that of those born male, about 80% have a predominantly masculine essence. And of those born female, 80%-ish have a predominantly feminine essence. And it really helps to get to know yourself, tune into yourself. And we could talk about ways of looking at that. because then you can flow with your more natural essence in life and in relationship. But the idea is that we all contain all of it inside. It's like this yin-yang diagram, yin being the feminine essence, yang being the masculine essence. And so, yeah, that's kind of the bird's eye view of it.
Yeah, because people who talk about these polarities, especially relationship coaches or therapists or experts that use this to help clientele, will use the phrase like being in your masculine or being in your feminine, implying what you just stated, that we have both energies in varying degrees, depending on the context of the relationship that you're in, the phase of life that you're in, and it's not just one or the other.
Yeah, and just to jump ahead and give a little example, like if you are an individual, doesn't matter what gender, with a predominantly feminine essence, where you're more likely to dance and flow and create, as opposed to a masculine essence of like stillness, consciousness, fix it, like thoughts, emptiness, etc. If you're an individual with a predominantly feminine essence and you get more stressed, you will likely be pushed into more of a masculine energy that isn't your natural essence, to try and kind of control or keep at bay the stress. And there are other ways of looking at this, like if a predominantly masculine essence individual is wounded or in a toxic masculinity, they're more likely to try and control, harm, get revenge on someone. Yeah.
So would you say somebody who has been triggered into an essence that isn't their predominant one, they might be really quote unquote good with it, like they might be effective at being, in this case, like very masculine, but they will be in stress. It won't feel natural, even if they can wield it well. And they would be more relaxed. They would be more well if they were operating according to what comes more naturally to them, their more predominant essence.
To give a real world example, just one that comes to mind that's probably not that uncommon is, say you're a single mother, a female with a predominantly feminine essence, and you have to raise a kid on your own and juggle all these jobs and take care of everything and fix your house and all that. You're stepping into basically both polarities, like the whole thing, including the nurturing kind of unconditional love of the feminine essence and the fierce protecting of the masculine essence. But then when you enter in relationship, if you often beneath the level of your awareness have embodied both, or predominantly masculine, where you have to take care of it all. And if you have a predominantly masculine essence partner who wants to spoil you or, drive the car so you don't have to worry about it, or pick where dinner is, or even like take care of parts of your kind of individual kingdom together that you're not used to loosening the reins on, that can not only create this lack of polarity, like the give and receive, the ravish and surrender in a trusting state, the
lead and be led.
Yeah. If you the work there is relaxing into the safety and letting yourself be led in certain ways, letting yourself take the lead in certain ways, and so that's where the polarities, understandably, can represent an arc of attraction. Yeah.
And I've heard people describe this when they have been in a situation like you described, and then maybe they get into a relationship where they can be put into their predominant energy type. There is a sort of they have to relinquish it, but then they have to relax into it. And once relaxed into it, there's a freedom and a safety that is sometimes surprising to them, but very, very welcomed.
Yeah. And the goal, I should point out, is we talked about how gender doesn't matter. There is a risk of gender stereotypes when we talk about this. Right. Like, I'll admit it. And so we're going to try to choose our words carefully and make all those disclaimers, knowing all that. But, apologies in advance if any of this is triggering. We're very much, not individuals who are tied to a concept of gender, right? And see it as more fluid. And that's why we're saying that to have a masculine essence predominantly, you don't have to be a male, right? But the big picture is not only to find your natural essence in life and in relationship, if you are in relationship, but also to be able to kind of swing the pendulum along that spectrum in your relationship and in your life. An example would be like, you might be the one who offers the shoulder for your partner to cry on most easily, readily, but an enlightened kind of relationship would mean that sometimes you can cry on your partner's shoulder and embody that essence when you have something, some kind of big moving, changing energy to move through, and you let it happen. Yeah,
good example. It makes me think of the words balance and harmony, that regardless of the degrees of each pole, regardless of the degrees to which each pole are present, you want them to be in balance and in harmony. So if that means, like you said, the person who's typically masculine is leading in that masculine way, there are going to be times when he, she, they need to relax into the other pole, the feminine energy type.
And that becomes that complete yin-yang circle, because in the end, it's about unity, and the polarities are parts of it. And so this yin-yang becomes control versus surrender, action versus non-action, stillness and emptiness versus dancing, changing, moving, love and light, things like that. And so the more we do this work, the more we can understand ourselves, where we lie on that spectrum, and flexibly flow along it, whether it's in relationship or in life.
Right. Yeah. I like that you keep bringing up yin yang. I always heard it pronounced yin yang, and I just can't get that out of my mind. But I think yang is.
Yeah, go for it. There are no rules here.
There are no rules.
No, I know what you mean. It's like you could debate those things all day,
right.
But I'll say yang, you say yang. How's that?
I like it because, as the symbol implies, there is a bit of both in each. So, the white and the black, there's a dot of the other in each. And I think just the symbol itself communicates what we've started the conversation with, right?
Maybe a little line, passage, or poem from the Tao Te Ching might help from a big picture standpoint, if you'll allow it, Steve.
Yeah, I'll allow it.
Okay. So with the preface that yin and yang is this concept or system of recognizing how to separate out the polarities, the patterns, the opposites in life, while relaxing into acceptance of the overall whole and complete nature of the Tao. So when people see things as beautiful, ugliness is created. When people see things as good, evil is created. Being and non-being produce each other. Difficult and easy complement each other. Long and short define each other. High and low oppose each other. Fore and aft follow each other.
Yeah, that seems more cosmic. Like just the nature of the universe is this interplay between creation and destruction.
Yep. Yeah.
And creative forces and entropy.
And so one other example that I think puts it in perspective for me, and I'll admit, like I have before, I come from a kind of a yogic biased perspective, and I really like to geek out on these Hindu deities and their stories.
Yeah.
But some of the most archetypal, like, gods of polarity in Hindu texts would be Shiva and Shakti. And Shiva is this all-powerful god who goes off into a cave where he meditates for 1,000 years. Shakti, sees, feels that they are meant to be together and wants to get the attention of Shiva, who's meditating for 1,000 years in a cave and has so far been unperturbable, period. But so Shiva starts dancing, and The feminine doesn't need to find power or in success in things. The feminine is naturally powerful. And so that dancing, flowing gets Shiva's attention. They then make love for 1,000 years.
How about that?
And they birth the universe. Okay. And because the union of them became the creation of all.
Yeah, the union of those two polarities. I like what you said about the feminine being naturally powerful, and the masculine being a being or an energy type that has to like, it's gonna be graphic, but like insert himself into the universe to sort of create power or find power.
Yep. And so Shiva without Shakti would just be like words and thoughts. He, like, while meditating for 1,000 years, he was thinking about ways to solve problems of the universe or something like that, but didn't solve them, right? And then, but Shiva as this powerful flowing, Shakti as the full flowering expression of all like feminine power in the universe, is like this flowing river, and without Shiva to provide the riverbanks and the structure of that, might just flood the world. And so you could see Shiva or the masculine essence as the riverbanks, and Shakti or the feminine essence as the river. And with the disclaimer that the riverbanks are not in charge; they're actually shaped like heavily itself, over time by the river that flows through it. But it is a partnership between the two. And it is their natural essence, like, so you can flow with the natural direction of things. Like if you're a river, you want to flow.
Maybe we should back up a bit and just sort of more thoroughly define the difference between these two polarities. I've got a few qualities here written down. That the masculine energy is, and you can correct any of these if I get them wrong, but strength, assertiveness, independence, logic, focus, action, leadership, sort of a goal-oriented approach, while the feminine is nurturing, intuitive, receptive, empathic, has emotional depth, creative, collaborative, and more relational.
Yeah. So to boil it down, like the masculine could be thought of as consciousness or emptiness, and the feminine, love and light, the positive pole, if you will, like the radiating love, like giving yourself completely without thought, and the masculine seeking to understand. And the positive, the masculine would be like more of a purpose, and then the feminine being the being love. Being
versus becoming.
So
you said pole. So it's interesting to think that each of these energy types have maybe poles within themselves. I don't necessarily know what that would be. Like you hear the phrase toxic masculinity in culture used to refer to somebody who's in their masculine, maybe in a negative way, in an overly controlling way, in a rejecting way.
Yeah, it's like the misguided energies, when not channeled, when not feeling safe, when not able to flow in their natural direction, can either get toxic, like you're describing. The wounded masculine energy would try to like punish people or control,
destroy.
And understandably, a feminine energy that doesn't feel safe can't dance and flow or relax into that or radiate, love to the universe, and or can get misdirected, like we were talking about with the Shakti example of like just flooding the world, or Kali destroying energy that might even be misguided if not in this state of balance and harmony.
Yeah. So if we apply this to relationship dyads, I've heard women talk about the difference between sort of toxic masculinity and being in a relationship with somebody who is being toxically masculine, wounded in the way you described, versus confidently and safely masculine. And there is, of course, a very clear distinction there. and talking about how they feel safe to dance, to be free flowing, to be creative, to be wild, when there are sort of the riverbanks that you described of a confident, embodied, sure of himself, but not cocky, strong, but also soft, masculine energy type.
Yeah, so if you read the writings of David Data, who talks a lot about this, one of the things he'll say is that the feminine essence will test the riverbanks, will test the masculine to know if it's there, if it's safe, if it's breakable, if it's going to collapse at the first sign of pressure. Is it really safe? And the testing happens in real world relationships. Like in this idea of a feminine essence, words are changing, emotions are changing. They don't really matter in the moment. It's like it's a creative flow and dance, and not something to from a conscious, fully embodied masculine essence to take personally and get all worked up about, because in this concept of testing, it's testing to see if the foundation is solid, if you will be there tomorrow, so you can really relax into radiating love. And one other thing it makes me think about is this saying that women need a reason to have sex, men just need a place. And women need a reason because they need to feel seen, understood, and safe. And so, and that's gender stereotyping, I know. So what I really meant was the feminine essence, needs a reason, needs safety.
I can imagine these dynamics at play in couples therapy. Like if you were to approach a couple who's come to you for help, with being informed by this polarity, this energy dynamic, what might you see? What might manifest as problems in a relationship in the therapy room that are problems of unbalanced or disharmonized, not harmonized polarities?
Yeah. And so when depolarization happens, and I should first clarify something I earlier said, that differences are what make a relationship passionate, the arc of polarity. Differences in energetic essence that you embody, not differences in values. You need shared values, right? And that, in my opinion, isn't what erodes into polarity or attraction or magnetism or yin-yang flow as a beautiful dyad in the world. Right? But if you're not relaxing into those as a couple or as a dyad, then you don't see the tests for what they are. Like the process of building trust isn't seen with the big picture in mind. It's taken personally and reactive, and you're so easily kind of caught up in your own reactions that you're actually doing the opposite. Like the feminine essence is testing that you're there by maybe saying things about what they fear. It might even be a criticism or trying to get your attention, like Shakti and Shiva. A classic example would be like a masculine essence dude who's just sitting there on the sofa watching sports because sports are an example of a masculine thing where someone takes a ball and tries to get it into a hole and end a game and it's over and it's like a victory and they kill the other, whatever. But she's testing to see if you're there, and to get your attention, she might even have to escalate, take your favorite record collection while staying there in front of you and say the wildest things and break them right in front of you to see if you can hold your conscious masculine ground and not turn evil, right? And I'm not saying that pattern, that people should stay in a pattern that exemplifies that every day. But it's like just one example that comes to mind of how it could play out and how people could get derailed by not seeing the bigger picture, by not embodying that, in the face of big changing emotions, be the rock. If you are the one that needs to embody the masculine essence in that moment.
Yeah, be the rock. And I think you referenced some examples that were maybe a little less troubling earlier, like picking where to go for dinner. That's been a funny dynamic in my relationship, because my wife and I guess we're both in our feminine when it comes to deciding where to go to eat. It's like, I don't know where you want to go. I don't know where you want to go. And I decided I wanted to try just arbitrarily picking a place, because I genuinely don't care. I'm a trash compactor. I'll eat just about anything. So she'll say, where do you want to go? And I'll say, all right, let's go here. And she likes it when I choose.
So that worked.
It works.
Yeah.
But in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, what if she's not going to like where we go, or, the food's, she's not able to find something that she wants to eat. And then it's my fault. Like, well, you picked this place. She's not that kind of person. She's not going to punish me for it. But
the masculine the masculine essence shows up as more confidence, because of, a couple things, because of those traits you mentioned of like strength and protection, and also because the feminine doesn't need to prove anything and just is like the most powerful, loving force in the universe. And so like what your example there of you tried on showing up in a way that embodied a masculine essence by like, I'm going to plan this whole date night down to picking the restaurant, and maybe I'll even make it a surprise, but she's not gonna have to worry about a thing other than like, we're going on an adventure, my dear. And it sounds like that was very welcomed by her. But that's one of the ways you can see, like, what's your natural predisposition or energy? Like, do you like to be surprised and taken on an adventure like that? Do you like to be ravished? Or is your natural predisposition in the bedroom to do the ravishing,
right,
or be ravished? And gender aside, it doesn't matter on your gender at birth. Yeah.
And again, those polarities exist to varying degrees within each person. So you might be the kind of person who likes to do the ravishing most of the time, and then there might be times when you want to be the ravished.
Yeah, that's the more enlightened flow of the journey, is you can swing along this pendulum within relationship, and especially important if you have two people who happen to be closer to the middle of the spectrum in relationship. Like, it's not a black or white. We all have both inside of us, but I do believe we all at a time in our life fall somewhere on the spectrum naturally, and how we're showing up. But that would be an example of just like taking turns embodying that, whether it's crying on a shoulder or like planning, taking care of things on the home front, or in the bedroom.
I was thinking about how this might apply in therapy and even in psychedelic-assisted therapy. Our clinical trials are alive and well. I was facilitating an LSD participant. Was it earlier this week?
Wednesday.
Time's weird.
Yeah.
And one of the things we do to help ensure or facilitate the best outcome possible is to arrange for a safe, secure, predictable setting, right? We talked a lot about set and setting with reference to psychedelic therapy. And part of the setting is so that the participant can relax. So in a way, that's perhaps like a masculine energy applied to the therapeutic approach.
Unchanging, constant safety.
And directed. We the way a lot of these clinical trials are approaching psychedelic assisted therapy is via an inner directed approach for the actual internal work that's happening.
You're taking care of the outside world. You're like defending the space so that they can go inward and dance and flow and have an experience.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, it's a good example. And like this shows up in DBT a lot, in like the whole D part of it is dialectic, or that the paradoxes that show up in life. In fact, it brings to mind one other little Taoism kind of saying. It's like the sage is detached yet compassionate, enjoys life yet doesn't cling to it, is a perfectionist yet indifferent to success, is a person of honor yet avoids reaping honor, does not strive yet achieves, knows the answers, prefers to remain silent, has the innocence and playfulness of a child but incredible inner strength. Yeah.
That sounds hard to do. Sounds hard to be a sage.
Yeah,
But I aspire to sagehood, I guess.
Yeah, well, that's the idea, is that we're born into these people suits, and even the polarities in childhood. I think about like how Freud and Jung looked at things, like how a lot of our struggles and our mental health later in life come from childhood and our relationship with our mother and our father. And they had kind of different views on like which kid would get jealous of, the attention of which parent and all that. But the fact of the matter is, if you're growing up as a kid without a father figure who was consistent or present, then you might be seeking that subconsciously later in life in your relationships, even friendships or work relationships. You might keep going to subconsciously to people who embody even a disorganized, like fatherly, controlling attachment figure, if that's how you were raised. There's so many ways it can show up in development and therefore in therapy.
Yeah. It's interesting to see how that sort of the early psychoanalytic ideas about these polarities and the attachment relationships make it into now just modern colloquial understanding of relationships. Like you will hear people say, oh, that person has daddy issues or mommy issues, or they married their mother, they married their father. Perhaps for the reasons you described, like trying to recapitulate those early relationships to fix them this time around, or because it's what they were familiar with. Yeah,
because if we were raised always seeking the attention of or approval, you seek your father figure's approval, you seek your mother's devotion and love in an archetypal standpoint. And if you had, say, an absent father, and for some people that might mean you're always like showing up in ways in relationship that might be seeking that fatherly type approval, but it could be at the expense of yourself.
Right. Yeah. And perhaps you're seeking people who tend to withhold approval, right? Because you're trying to repair that wound. So you're, as I said, recapitulating similar relational environments over and over and over again. And people will wonder, like I have clients ask themselves this in therapy, like, why do I keep picking the same people over and over and over again when I know how these relationships are going to end?
It's a karmic cycle where we seek people who are like the pathological opposite complementary puzzle piece of our psychopathologies or something like that. Right. It reminds me of the quote from the book Perks of Being a Wallflower. We seek the love we think we deserve.
Yeah, it's a testament to the kind of progress a person can make in counseling when to that end. If you can shift and heal and alter what you think you deserve, then the love that you seek shifts and changes. And then you start inviting a different kind of love into your life. And you have to get used to it because it can almost feel uncomfortable, even if it's part of you really, really wants. But it can feel unright because it isn't the you grew up in.
And it's part of like a prerequisite for flowing in an enlightened way in relationship, even though the catch-22 is you can't figure it out fully until you're in relationship and you have all those buttons pushed, right? Yeah. But I like how David Data in his work has the 3 stages of love. Like the first stage love might be this kind of this archetypal, more toxic, masculine, like macho type archetype, not feeling feelings or being able to embody the other, maybe a little like controlling and punitive. And then the feminine, response to that is also not ideal, like we've been talking about. But then in a second stage, you're more like coexisting as life partners and moving towards more embodying your individual energetic essence roles of masculine and feminine, but then this like enlightened love, or a third stage, would be where you identify your natural predisposition from being in this human form and having this energetic essence, but you can flow along that and be together and whole within yourself, the full yin-yang complement.
Yeah. That seems really appealing. To have that kind of self-awareness, and to maybe have enough experience with a partner that establishes a level of trust that you feel free to flow, and maybe an accurate understanding of when your partner needs you to show up in a particular energetic essence, when you feel like you need to show up in a particular energetic essence, and then calibrating to, like you were saying earlier, what comes more naturally to you.
Yeah, it helps to check in on it regularly and remember the innate differences, like energetically, that you each have. Because like if you have a feminine essence and which can feel everything at once, right? But that's a foreign concept for a masculine essence that has as its power like a single focus energy. So then if the feminine essence is saying he or they are not paying attention to me, it's kind of forgetting that they couldn't multitask and feel it all at once like you could, because of their energetic essence. Or, there was another example that just came to mind. It was, anyway, it'll come to me in a minute.
Well, at risk of putting you off the rails, it just made me think of the sex therapy world and the role that conscious kink plays in the sex therapy world. It reminded me of this section in Jamie Wheel's book, Recapture the Rapture, where he references all this survey data about first responders who were traumatized by the 9/11 catastrophe, who found healing in going to these sex dungeons, for lack of a better term, and being dominated by professional dominatrixes. Is that the plural of dominatrix? Dominatrix try, or whatever. Because, they had to be the person holding everything together. They had to be the rescuer. They had to be the one saving, that they could only really release and let go in this container of complete vulnerability, right? I mean, you're in sexual vulnerability, being dominated by this. In these cases, it was typically men being dominated by women. And in that container, they actually did a ton of trauma work. It wasn't just all about kink and getting off. It was about surrendering in a container of safety in a very intimate and vulnerable way.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And for more on this, the book Existential Kink is a really interesting look at it, with a lot of examples of how in the intimacy of relationship, you can see and work on a lot of these dynamics, and you see not only how they show up in the bedroom and intimacy, but also how you can transmute by taking on these roles in a place of safety. It reminds me of even the, I guess, parallels to a lot of the work we do in therapy.
Yeah, there's even that stereotype of the hard-charging, male-identified CEO who's always making decisions, always in charge, who has the submission fetish, because that's the only time in his life where he can truly not be in charge. Yeah,
that's a good example. It's a pretty confusing concept at first glance, understandably, because we're talking about the polarity of opposites, or in this idea of yin yang, where you've got this circle, you got a white dot in the black section and a black dot in the white section. The black dot and the white is the speck of the bad that's within the good, and vice versa. The white dot and the black is the good that's in the bad. And you see this play out in Darth Vader having the seed of goodness, and Luke having the potential to follow his father to the dark side or to good. And the universe is this constant oscillation between yin and yang and dark and light.
I like that you brought up the Star Wars example, because I feel like the human soul responds to stories like that because it is authentic to how we really are. We don't like boring stories, and often what makes them boring is this lack of polarity, lack of complexity in the characters. Like we want to know that Darth Vader has complicated motives. It's less interesting if he's just evil, if he's just Satan, if he's just purely the devil.
And that brings up another point that I've always found really interesting, because like Eastern philosophies and schools of thought and religions embrace the dark and the light a lot more than we do in the Western world. Like Western religions tend to say that like God is good and Satan is evil. But if you were looking at it from a Taoist perspective, like rewind, like beyond Buddhism and Hinduism, and like that, there isn't good or evil, and both sides of this coin exist, and they would see Satan as equally useful to learn from as Jesus, I think.
Interesting. It makes me think of sort of the Greek and Roman polytheistic pantheon, and how those gods were capricious, they were jealous, they were lusty, like they were projections, extreme projections of sort of what's present in the human psyche, and I don't know, arguably more interesting because of that fact. Yeah,
and that's one thing that's always intrigued me and drawn me to Hinduism, is that the stories of the deities, and there are many deities, are wild and crazy. But there's a lot of like human type folly in their stories that gives them the chance to learn lessons and make amends and transcend these like cycles of suffering through the process, instead of kind of a view that it's good, evil, sin, you're bad, going to hell, end of story kind of thing.
Until you're purified.
Yeah.
This might seem like kind of a non sequitur, but our conversation reminded me of this clip I saw of Macho-man Randy Savage.
Oh, nice.
So this pro wrestler way back in the day that I used to watch. This is like the Hulk Hogan era of pro wrestling. So he's on the Arsenio Hall show, and Arsenio asks him about his name, about Macho-man. So I'm just going to play this. Hopefully it comes through on the microphone.
Your middle name is Macho, but I'm wondering if you ever cry. Has Macho-man ever cried?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Uh-huh. It's okay for macho men to show every emotion available right there, because I've cried 1,000 times, I'm going to cry some more. But I've soared with the eagles, and I've slithered with the snakes, and I've been everywhere in between. And I'm going to tell you something right now. There's one guarantee in life, and that there are no guarantees, yeah. And you gotta understand this. Yeah. Nobody likes a quitter. Nobody said life was easy, so if you get knocked down, take the standing 8 count, get back up, and fight again. And you're a macho maniac. Dig it.
Dig it.
That's hilarious.
I love that, like, Macho-man Randy Savage is enlightened. That his whole character, this whole persona being a macho man, and he gives this wonderful message about what it actually means to be macho, that you actually can experience all the emotions on the color wheel of feelings.
I did not expect that from way back then, having been raised in the Arsenio Hall era.
Snap into a Slim Jim.
Yeah.
Thanks, Macho Man. Dig it.
Oh, that's good.
He's great. So yeah, any other thoughts? Pro wrestling related or not, with respect to polarity?
Well, I'm just thinking of one question you had, is what are the practical implications of this? And especially in relationship, like we're all in relationship with like of all kinds, right? Family and friends, and the closer the partnership, the more likely we trigger each other, and the more of a catalyst that is for polarities to be known and played with, explored. But I'm just thinking of like if the feminine essence partner is too afraid to relax into their femininity, it doesn't feel safe, or if the masculine partner is bent out of shape, loses his masculine riverbank kind of backbone, the relationship depolarizes and is in trouble. And we often trigger in each other the behavior we want to avoid, because like another polarity to embody in relationship is this courage and vulnerability, like two sides of the love coin, if you will, where both partners commit to like just being present and staying with it and staying connected and more getting to know and accept our partners for who they are. And instead of expecting them to be a certain way, getting to know their natural essence and figuring out how we flow on that pendulum together.
Yeah, it's a testament to the importance of open communication. Resisting the urge to shame or to criticize, and to allow for growth. That my experience in my relationships is that they are never ending, a process of never ending unfolding. That we're never fully baked bread. I feel like I'm going to be in the oven until this instantiation of Steve Thayer is done.
Burn it all away.
Awesome. Well, thanks for the polarizing conversation about polarity and
likewise.
Yeah.
Thanks, Steve.
Psychedelic Therapy Frontiers is brought to you by Numinus, a mental wellness company committed to tackling the global mental health crisis by delivering best-in-class psychedelic-assisted therapies, contributing to the body of primary and clinical psychedelic research, and fostering healing through community connection and social responsibility. You can learn more about Numinus at numinus.com. That's Numinus.com. If you enjoyed the show today and you want to support us, here's how you do it. Rate and review the show on platforms like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Subscribe to the Numinus YouTube channel, like the videos, and share it. Share the show or clips of the show with someone that you think will enjoy it. The content of this podcast does not constitute medical advice or mental health treatment. Consult with a medical or mental health professional if you believe you are in need of mental health treatment.